Good evening, America, and welcome to your Wednesday edition of Just the News, Not Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you as always from our nation's capital.
And I am your co-host, Amanda Head, joining y'all from Los Angeles, California. But on the other side of the country, in New York, President Trump is the target of yet another lawsuit as the state's Attorney General, Letitia James, has filed a fraud-based suit against the former president and his three eldest children. Now, while Letitia James says that the Trump organization deceived officials about their property values, she is up for re-election this year. The former First family responded on their social media account saying that she only filed this civil case in an attempt to boost her poll numbers. Now, Ivanka Trump is the only one named in the suit who has not yet responded publicly. And in wasteful spending news, FEMA, the federal agency that oversees emergency management response, lost more than $3.7 billion in fraudulent COVID relief payouts. According to the federal watchdog, the report issued last week showed roughly $3.3 billion in potential fraud payments, $21 million in overpayments, and $400 million in payments given without requiring documentation of eligibility, amongst other outbound payments. And if you don't think that we are going to be asking our guest from Taxpayers Protection Alliance about this later in the show, well, you just haven't watched the show very much and you don't know us very well, apparently. John, you used to be a sports journalist. I want to hear some sports news, something that is uplifting, before we get into all of those hard-hitting headlines tonight with our first guest.
Oh, yes, Amanda, you're taking me back a few decades with this one, but I was a sports writer, and let me tell you, as early as tonight, one of baseball's immortal records may fall. That's right, New York Yankee slugger Aaron Judge, who is as loved among fans as he is tall, he's very tall, 6'8", is just one home run away from tying Yankees legend Roger Maris's 61 homers, a record that has stood in the American League for more than 6 decades. Judge hit his 60th homer last night, tying Babe Ruth, another immortal figure, in an epic 5-run comeback, and he suits up again tonight against the Pittsburgh Pirates. All eyes in sports will be on the man who has made the phrase "all rise" a favorite in the stands of Yankee Stadium. If you're wondering about that, Judge, the last name. All right. Meanwhile, let's get to some real news now. Our first guest is a giant voice when it comes to health policy. Congresswoman Miller-Meeks of Iowa is a doctor and has been on the legislative front lines to provide common sense and affordable solutions during times of major health policy challenges. While many Democrat lawmakers try to take the credit for being the leaders on health care, Republicans are doing just as much while trying to find some bipartisan solutions. And joining us right now is a Congresswoman who just introduced the Biologics Competition Act. Congresswoman, great to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, John and Amanda. I really appreciate your bringing attention to these issues.
Yeah, they're so important, and they don't get covered enough in the media anymore. I want to start, before we go to the new legislation, just want to start with a big ruling. Came out just a short while ago. A federal judge has ruled that the Biden administration may not impose COVID-19 vaccine or mask mandates on the children and teachers inside the federal health Head Start program. Your thoughts about that ruling? It seems to be the latest rebuke of the Biden administration's overreach.
Well, this was a huge overreach of the federal government. And as you said, this was a bill that I put out back in April when I learned that, every state in the union was getting rid of mask mandates. Children were back in school. We know that learning loss was most significant among those in lower income, more vulnerable populations, people of color. But yet in Head Start, because it's a federal program, they were still requiring that 2, 3, and 4-year-olds wear masks. And it's not just the mask wearing, it's also the learning loss, the speech development. So when you already have children that are starting out from a disadvantaged position, to place this burden on those children, when there was plenty of documented evidence that speech impediment learning was not enhanced, was actually detrimental in wearing masks in this age group, language development, it was just insane that this policy was kept forward. So I put forth the bill, tried to get people on this bill, tried to mass support, and I would talk about this, and people were shocked in Iowa when I would mention that we are still masking 3 and 4-year-olds in the Head Start program because it's a federal program.
Yeah, just amazing.
Amazing. And maybe this judge, I think it was District Judge Doty down in Louisiana, who's had some significant rulings lately. Maybe he heard President Biden's 60 Minutes interview where President Biden said that the pandemic is over, so he felt compelled to rule this way. I wanted to ask you, though, about your Biologics Competition Act. Competition, I feel like in any area of commerce or industry is very important, but especially in healthcare. And I read the description of this bill, and Congresswoman, it just seems like common sense to me.
Well, certainly all of us are aware of generic drugs, and we know generic drugs have been able to bring down the cost of medications. If you recall back to when Medicare Part D was put in place, I won't say the entity, the company came out with $4 generic drugs, and that really changed the landscape for prescription drugs. So for drugs such as insulin, even though they're a medication, they're just not classified in the same way. So this was a bill in order to get competition, to get pharmacists to be able to substitute a biologically similar drug, an equivalent drug, if you will, chemically equivalent medication, so that we could bring down costs. So in essence, what we're trying to get out is biosimilar drugs that are the same, that they are, chemically, they have an equivalency, to let those be prescribed as generic drugs, which would bring down the cost of medication.
And everyone is struggling with that as inflation goes up. Healthcare is going to be a big issue in the November election. The Republicans are going to roll out their commitment with America in the next couple of days. Tell us a little bit about the differences in the way Republicans have approached healthcare and the way the Obamacare Democrats have approached it.
Well, the way I think you can look at the Obamacare, we knew that it was going to lead to increased cost of premiums, which it has. They've skyrocketed. We knew people would lose insurance coverage, which they did. We knew people would be, relegated to doctors not within their own network, and we've seen that as insurance companies have narrowed their networks. So costs are up, and people weren't able to keep their providers. Networks are narrowed. So, the Democrats' approach has been, using Obamacare to go to a single-payer Medicare for all system. But as you know, and your viewers know, Medicare for all is not the same program that we have now. So whereas the Democrats want the government to control everything, they want an archaic, paternalistic, patriarchal system of the past where some bureaucrat is controlling your healthcare decisions. And the Republicans want to use technology, state-of-the-art advances in healthcare in order to help empower you to have better health, to be able to control your health, and to empower both you and your doctor to make decisions that are best for you. We want to use advancing technology that will able to bring down costs, that will be able to help you and inform you of what's available, and to help you, manage your own health care and health resources and behavior that get you to better healthy lifestyles, which will also bring down costs. So it's a dramatically different approach, using competition, using available technology and information, but really putting the doctor and patient back in control of their healthcare and the healthcare decisions that they make. Dramatically different. One is modern, state-of-the-art, forward-thinking, a decision that you and your doctor make, puts you, the consumer, the patient, in charge. And the other one is, as I said, top-down bureaucratic control of your healthcare decisions. And watching what we've seen of some of our federal government agencies, do we really want more bureaucrats in charge?
Definitely not.
Absolutely. Yeah, here. I wanted to ask you about telehealth. This is something that I think for the most part, it really kind of sprang to the forefront of American medical society during COVID, because so many people were told to stay home. So many people wanted to stay home. They didn't want to get out in public and possibly subject themselves to other people who might be sick. But the telehealth apps that exist out there are mainly privately funded. Some of them I think are supported by hospital systems like Cedars-Sinai and UCLA. But is there some type of federal investment that needs to be made into telehealth so that going forward, even though we're out of COVID, communities like rural communities will still have access to it?
So two things. One is that technology really accelerated to the point that it made telehealth acceptable. So even for a decade, we've been trying to get groups of people, even in the same location, onto one screen at a time. And then images and digital images, being able to transmit them. So as technology improved, cameras improved, connectivity improved, it really, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and people were told to stay home, technology was at a place where it made telehealth so much better and so much more palatable and acceptable. So I think, we have rules that need to change, but I think the marketplace will take care of that. What we do need investment in from the federal government or from government resources is in broadband. So making sure people have connectivity. So in rural areas, connectivity is extraordinarily important. When I did broadband bills in the Iowa State Senate, I called them, please get Dr. Miller-Meeks better connectivity, better internet access so her children will come home for more than a day. And so, but it underscores the point that when you're in rural areas, but even in urban areas, there will be desert areas where you do not have connectivity. And so making sure that there is widespread broadband access is extraordinarily important. That's going to help with telehealth, telework, and telelearning. But then on the federal side, looking at our regulations that don't reimburse for telehealth, since I came into Congress, I've been on numerous bills, letters, in order to try to get the waivers that were made through the pandemic to get those made permanent. So we're going to continue to see telehealth accelerate, but we also need the broadband infrastructure investment that I think we're seeing. Our state did that. Governor Reynolds did that with some of the CARES dollars that was received. And so it was a very wise investment in the state in how to get more broadband access, even out to the last dollar mile.
So important. Congresswoman, you're a leader in this field. We're so lucky to have you on a monumental week with your bill coming out, the court's ruling in a good direction. A lot of exciting stuff going on in the healthcare space. Thanks for joining us today.
Again, thank you for covering these very important topics.
They are indeed. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Amanda and I will be right back with former prosecutor and chief of staff at the Department of Defense under President Trump, my good friend, Kash Patel.